Love is supposed to be a source of joy, support, and connection. Yet sometimes it feels like a weight pressing down on your shoulders, draining your energy and dimming your spirit. When love feels heavy, it's a sign that something crucial is missing: responsibility. Not blame, not guilt, but responsibility. Responsibility is the quiet backbone that holds love up, that keeps it from collapsing under pressure. Think about it. When love is light and fulfilling, it's because both people in the relationship are willing to step up, to own their part. They don't wait for the other person to fix everything or to carry the emotional load. They recognize that love isn't just a feeling or a promise. It's an action, a choice made every day. And that choice demands accountability. Accountability for how you treat your partner, for how you communicate, for how you handle your own emotions. Love is often described as the most beautiful and uplifting of human experiences. It's the bond that connects us, the energy that fuels our deepest joy, and the force that gives life meaning. But love is not just about feelings or grand gestures. At its core, love is a shared responsibility, a commitment that goes beyond words. When accountability is missing in love, it transforms from a source of freedom into a heavy burden. Imagine a relationship where one person always expects the other to make things right, to fix problems, to carry emotional weight. Over time, this dynamic creates imbalance. The person who is always giving begins to feel exhausted, while the other may become complacent or even disconnected. This imbalance doesn't just create strain, it breeds resentment. When love loses accountability, it stops being a partnership and becomes a chore. Accountability means owning your actions and their impact on the relationship. It means recognizing that your words, your choices, and even your silence shape the emotional climate between you and your partner. Without this ownership, misunderstandings pile up, conflicts remain unresolved, and wounds go unhealed. It's like carrying a backpack filled with stones. Each unaddressed issue adds weight, making the journey heavier and more difficult. In many relationships, love becomes heavy because accountability is mistaken for blame. People fear taking responsibility because they associate it with fault. But accountability is not about blaming yourself or your partner. It's about recognizing your part in the shared experience and actively working to make things better. When both people in a relationship embrace accountability, they create a space where trust can grow, where vulnerabilities can be shared without fear. When accountability is present, love feels lighter because it's built on honesty and trust. Both partners can speak openly about their needs, fears, and mistakes without fearing judgment. This openness reduces misunderstandings and allows for genuine connection. Accountability creates a rhythm where each person listens, responds, and adjusts, ensuring that love is a two-way street rather than a one-sided effort. Conversely, when accountability is absent, love feels heavy because one or both people avoid difficult conversations. Problems get swept under the rug, emotions get bottled up, and silence replaces communication. This avoidance may seem like peace, but it's actually a pressure cooker waiting to explode. The longer issues are ignored, the heavier love feels. Burdened by unspoken grievances and unmet expectations, it's important to realize that accountability is also about emotional maturity. It means being willing to acknowledge when you're wrong, apologizing sincerely, and making an effort to change. It means not blaming your partner for your own unhappiness or frustration. When both people can do this, love becomes a space for growth rather than conflict. The burden of love without accountability often manifests as frustration, exhaustion, and disconnection. One or both partners may feel stuck, asking themselves why love feels so difficult or draining. The answer often lies in the invisible weight of unowned actions and unspoken feelings. Love should feel like a safe harbor, a place where you can relax and be yourself, not a place where you carry the heavy load of unresolved issues. Embracing accountability doesn't mean love will be perfect. Conflict will still arise and mistakes will still happen. But when accountability is present, these challenges become opportunities for deeper understanding and stronger connection rather than reasons to pull away. Ultimately, love flourishes when both people commit to being responsible for their part. This responsibility isn't a burden, it's a gift. It allows love to be real, honest, and alive. It lightens the load because it transforms love from a passive feeling into an active, shared commitment. When you choose accountability and love, you choose to build something lasting. You choose to nurture a relationship where both people feel valued and heard. You choose to carry love together, not as a weight to bear alone, but as a shared journey that lifts both of you higher. Love without accountability is a heavy burden, but love with accountability, that is freedom. Trust is the invisible thread that holds any relationship together. Without trust, love, friendship, and partnership cannot thrive. But trust doesn't appear out of thin air. It is built carefully, brick by brick, over time. And at the core of this construction lies responsibility. Responsibility is the foundation on which trust stands firm. Without it, trust crumbles and relationships become fragile and uncertain. Responsibility means owning your actions, your words, and the impact they have on others. It's about being reliable and consistent, showing up when you say you will, following through on promises, and being accountable for the role you play. When you take responsibility, you send a powerful message. You can depend on me. This message creates safety, and safety is the soil where trust grows. In any meaningful relationship, whether with a partner, a friend, or a colleague, responsibility breeds confidence. When someone consistently demonstrates responsibility, it signals respect and care. It means they value the relationship enough to honor their commitments, to be mindful of how their behavior affects the other person, and to be honest about their limitations and mistakes. This honesty, paired with accountability, strengthens the emotional bond and deepens trust. On the other hand, when responsibility is lacking, trust begins to erode. If promises are broken or commitments ignored, doubts creep in. You start to wonder if you can rely on that person, if their words mean anything, or if their presence will waver when challenges arise. These doubts create distance, anxiety, and often resentment. Without responsibility, relationships become shaky, built on uncertainty rather than solid ground. Responsibility also means taking ownership of your mistakes and being willing to make amends. No one is perfect, and errors are inevitable. But trust is maintained when people do not shy away from admitting when they are wrong. This humility, combined with a genuine effort to repair harm, reaffirms that the relationship matters and that the person is committed to nurturing it. Avoiding responsibility by deflecting blame or hiding faults only weakens trust because it reveals a lack of integrity. Furthermore, responsibility involves being emotionally present. It's about more than just keeping practical promises. It's about showing up with empathy, understanding, and respect. When you take responsibility for your emotional role, you listen attentively, respond thoughtfully, and engage honestly. This emotional responsibility reassures the other person that they are seen, heard, and valued. It creates an environment where trust flourishes because both people feel safe to be authentic without fear of judgment or abandonment. Trust built on responsibility is not fragile, it's resilient. It withstands conflicts and misunderstandings because both people have a foundation strong enough to hold space for growth and change. Responsibility allows for open communication and forgiveness, turning challenges into opportunities rather than threats. The power of responsibility in building trust also extends to everyday action. Sometimes it's the small things, remembering to check in, honoring deadlines, or simply being consistent, that speak louder than grand gestures. These actions accumulate and create a rhythm of dependability that feels reassuring and grounding. Over time, this rhythm transforms into trust that becomes the backbone of the relationship. When responsibility becomes a shared value, trust grows exponentially. Both people feel confident that they can count on each other, that their needs will be respected, and that the relationship is a safe place to be vulnerable. This mutual trust fosters deeper connection, stronger commitment, and a sense of partnership where both feel empowered and supported. Ultimately, responsibility and trust are inseparable. Responsibility lays the groundwork for trust to take root and flourish. Without responsibility, trust remains fragile and fleeting, vulnerable to every misstep and misunderstanding. But when responsibility is embraced, trust becomes a powerful force, steady, enduring, and transformative. Choosing responsibility is choosing to honor yourself and others. It's a commitment to act with integrity and care, to be dependable, and to nurture the bonds that make life meaningful. And in doing so, you create a foundation not just for trust, but for love, respect, and true connection. Relationships are among the most profound parts of our lives. They hold the potential for deep joy, growth, and connection, but they also demand effort and commitment. One of the most powerful forces that can transform any relationship, whether romantic, familial, or professional, is the act of embracing responsibility. Responsibility is more than just fulfilling obligations or avoiding blame. It is a conscious choice to own your role in the relationship and actively contribute to its health and growth. When embraced fully, responsibility transforms relationships from fragile and conditional into resilient and flourishing. At its core, responsibility means acknowledging that you play a part in shaping the reality of your relationships. It means understanding that your actions, words, and attitudes have consequences, not only for yourself, but for those around you. This awareness is liberating because it gives you agency. You are not simply a victim of circumstance or your partner's behavior. You are a co-creator of the relationship experience. When you embrace this, you shift from passivity to active participation. Many relationships suffer because one or both people fail to accept responsibility. They blame, avoid difficult conversations, or expect the other person to change or fix problems. This dynamic breeds frustration and stagnation. Love, respect, and trust begin to erode, replaced by resentment and disappointment. But when responsibility is embraced, these patterns start to break down. You stop waiting for the other person to get it right, and instead focus on what you can do to improve the connection. Taking responsibility also means being willing to face uncomfortable truths about yourself. It requires honesty and humility. Acknowledging your mistakes, your shortcomings, and how you may have contributed to conflicts or distance. This kind of self-awareness is not easy, but it is essential. It opens the door for growth because once you see your role clearly, you can choose to make different decisions. It also signals to your partner that you are committed to the relationship and willing to put in the work. Responsibility transforms relationships because it invites trust and safety. When both people take ownership of their behavior, communication becomes more open and authentic. There's no need for defensiveness or blame shifting because the focus shifts to understanding and solving problems together. This environment encourages vulnerability, which is the foundation for deeper intimacy and connection. Beyond emotional ownership, responsibility means showing up consistently. It means following through on promises, being reliable, and making time and energy available for the relationship. Small acts of responsibility, checking in regularly, listening deeply, apologizing sincerely, accumulate to create a strong, stable partnership. When these behaviors become habitual, they form a rhythm of care and respect that nourishes the relationship every day. Embracing responsibility also transforms resilience by fostering resilience. Challenges and conflicts are inevitable, but when both people take responsibility, these difficulties become opportunities to learn and grow rather than reasons to give up. Responsibility creates a mindset where obstacles are seen as temporary and solvable because both partners are committed to working through them together. His transformation extends beyond the relationship itself. When you embrace responsibility in your connections with others, you often find that you grow as a person. You develop greater emotional intelligence, patience, and empathy. You become more aware of your impact and more skilled in navigating complex emotions and situations. This personal growth enriches not only your current relationships, but also every interaction you have moving forward. Ultimately, embracing responsibility is a gift you give to yourself and to the people you love. It is a way to move from frustration and helplessness to empowerment and hope. It turns relationships into partnerships where both people feel valued, heard, and supported. It lifts the heaviness that can weigh love down and replaces it with lightness and possibility. Choosing to embrace responsibility is not always easy. It requires courage and commitment, but it is one of the most transformative decisions you can make. When you choose responsibility, you choose to build relationships that are authentic, lasting, and deeply fulfilling. In any relationship, responsibility is not always easy to embrace. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths. Unfortunately, when responsibility is avoided, the natural consequence is resentment. Resentment is a heavy, corrosive emotion that quietly builds over time, eroding the foundation of trust and love. It is often the invisible poison in relationships, growing in the shadows where responsibility is ignored or denied. Avoiding responsibility can take many forms. It might look like blaming the other person for problems, refusing to admit mistakes, or shirking difficult conversations. Sometimes it's subtle, avoiding emotional honesty, turning away from conflicts, or dismissing the needs and feelings of a partner. When these patterns become the norm, problems don't disappear, they multiply. Instead of addressing issues, people sweep them under the rug, hoping they will go away on their own, but unresolved issues don't vanish, they fester. Resentment begins as a small seed of frustration, but when responsibility is avoided, it grows unchecked. One person might feel burdened by carrying more of the emotional or practical weight, while the other remains passive or disengaged. This imbalance creates feelings of being unappreciated, unheard, or taken for granted. Over time, those feelings harden into resentment, a bitter emotion that blocks connection and empathy. When resentment takes hold, it changes how people relate to each other. It creates distance, even when partners are physically close. Communication becomes strained, and kindness gives way to irritation or sarcasm. The small disappointments that could have been resolved early turn into deep wounds. Resentment fuels a cycle of negativity where each interaction reinforces the feeling of unfairness and frustration. The more responsibility is avoided, the heavier the burden of resentment becomes. Avoiding responsibility often comes from fear. Fear of conflict, fear of vulnerability, or fear of admitting weakness. People may believe that if they don't take responsibility, they can avoid pain or disappointment. But in reality, avoidance only delays the inevitable and compounds the damage. It's like ignoring a leak in a dam. Eventually, the pressure will cause a breach, and the consequences will be much worse. Taking responsibility, by contrast, requires bravery. It means looking honestly at your role in the relationship, admitting when you've fallen short, and being willing to make changes. This can be uncomfortable, but it opens the door to healing and connection. When both partners commit to responsibility, resentment loses its power. Issues are addressed openly and with care, rather than being buried under silence or blame. Resentment is a barrier to intimacy because it blocks empathy and understanding. When people feel resentful, they stop listening with an open heart. Instead, they listen to defend themselves or to gather evidence against the other person. This defensive posture prevents meaningful dialogue and widens the emotional gap. Responsibility breaks down these barriers by encouraging honest communication and mutual respect. The antidote to resentment is accountability, taking ownership not only of mistakes, but also of feelings and needs. When you say, "I feel hurt when," or "I need support with," you take responsibility for your emotional experience rather than blaming or accusing. This approach invites your partner to respond with empathy, fostering a deeper connection. Avoiding responsibility can also damage self-esteem and personal growth. When you deny your role in a problem, you give away your power to change the situation. Resentment then becomes a symptom of helplessness, a feeling that things are stuck and cannot improve. But responsibility empowers you. It gives you the tools to make choices that improve your relationships and your life. In the end, avoiding responsibility may seem easier in the short term, but it costs much more in the long run. Resentment quietly poisons the bond between people, turning love into bitterness and connection into conflict. Choosing responsibility, even when it's difficult, keeps relationships alive and thriving. It fosters trust, respect, and genuine intimacy. The path to healthy, fulfilling relationships is paved with responsibility. When we embrace it, we create space for love to grow freely without the weight of resentment dragging us down. Responsibility is not a burden. It is the key to freedom and true connection. Emotional maturity is one of the most valuable qualities a person can develop, especially in relationships. It is the ability to understand and manage your own emotions, to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, and to engage with others in a way that fosters connection rather than conflict. At the heart of emotional maturity lies responsibility, a deep and ongoing commitment to own your feelings, actions, and their impact on others. Responsibility fuels emotional maturity because it transforms how we relate to ourselves and to those around us. Taking responsibility for your emotions means recognizing that your feelings are valid and important, but also that they are your own to manage. It requires a shift from seeing yourself as a passive victim of circumstances to becoming an active agent in your emotional life. This shift is crucial because emotional immaturity often looks like blaming others for how you feel or expecting them to fix your emotional state. When responsibility is embraced, you understand that while others can influence your emotions, they do not control them. You are accountable for how you respond, how you communicate, and how you navigate your internal world. This sense of responsibility builds emotional resilience. Life and relationships are full of challenges, misunderstandings, and conflicts. Emotional maturity doesn't mean you never feel hurt, angry, or frustrated. It means you can experience those emotions without being overwhelmed by them. You learn to pause, reflect, and choose your response rather than reacting out of impulse or defensiveness. This ability to regulate your emotions creates a stable foundation for healthy relationships because it reduces unnecessary conflict and fosters empathy. Responsibility also means owning your mistakes and learning from them. Emotional maturity grows when you can admit when you're wrong, apologize sincerely and make an effort to change, This process is not about weakness, but about strength, the strength to be vulnerable and honest. When you refuse to take responsibility, you avoid accountability and often deflect blame onto others, which stunts growth and damages trust. Emotional maturity thrives on accountability because it creates a space where learning and improvement are possible. Another critical aspect of responsibility in emotional maturity is the willingness to communicate openly and honestly. When you take responsibility for your feelings, you are more likely to express them clearly and respectfully. You don't expect others to guess what's wrong or to read your mind. Instead, you share your needs and concerns directly, inviting dialogue rather than conflict. This openness builds intimacy because it removes the barriers that secrecy and misunderstanding create. Responsibility also deepens empathy. When you acknowledge your own role in emotional situations, you become more aware that others too have their feelings and struggles. This awareness helps you listen more deeply and respond with compassion rather than judgment. Emotional maturity involves seeing beyond your perspective and valuing the emotional experience of others. If responsibility is the foundation of this capacity, because it requires you to step outside of yourself and take the relational context seriously. In practice, responsibility and emotional maturity looks like patience, humility, and self-reflection. It means checking in with yourself regularly to understand your emotional state and how it might be influencing your interactions. It means choosing forgiveness over grudges and seeking solutions rather than blame. It means being willing to grow and change, even when it's uncomfortable. When responsibility fuels emotional maturity, relationships transform. They become safer spaces where vulnerability is met with support, conflict is handled constructively, and love is strengthened by mutual respect. Emotional maturity doesn't mean perfection, but it means progress, a commitment to becoming a better version of yourself for your own sake and for those you care about. Ultimately, responsibility is not a burden but a gift. It empowers you to live authentically and connect deeply. It frees you from the cycles of blame and resentment and opens the door to genuine understanding and connection. When you embrace responsibility for your emotional life, you step into a place of maturity that enriches every relationship and every aspect of your life. Love is often imagined as a light, joyful experience, a source of warmth and connection that lifts us up. Yet, sometimes love can feel heavy, weighed down by expectations, misunderstandings, and unspoken burdens. The truth is, love becomes heavy when responsibility is unevenly carried or avoided altogether. But when responsibility is shared, love lightens. It becomes a force that supports, nurtures, and grows with ease and grace. Shared responsibility means that both people in a relationship actively participate in nurturing the bond. It means recognizing that love is not a one-person job, but a partnership where each person contributes their energy, care, and commitment. When responsibility is shared, the load no longer rests on one individual, preventing burnout and resentment. Instead, it becomes a mutual exchange that sustains and strengthens both partners. One of the ways shared responsibility lightens love is by creating balance. When one person takes on too much, whether emotional labor, decision-making, or the work of maintaining connection, stress and exhaustion build. This imbalance makes love feel like a burden rather than a joy. Sharing responsibility means dividing these tasks and roles fairly so both partners feel supported and valued. This balance creates a rhythm where giving and receiving flow naturally, like a dance. Shared responsibility also fosters trust. When both people know they can rely on each other to show up and contribute, a sense of safety develops. This safety encourages vulnerability and openness, essential ingredients for deep intimacy. Without trust, love becomes guarded and heavy with fear. But with shared responsibility, love feels lighter because both partners carry the emotional weight together, not alone. Moreover, shared responsibility encourages communication. It requires honest conversations about needs, expectations, and feelings. When these conversations happen regularly, misunderstandings are less likely to take root and grow. Instead, love stays clear and transparent, free from the fog of assumptions or unmet expectations. Communication fueled by shared responsibility keeps the relationship dynamic and responsive. Shared responsibility also means taking ownership of your part, including mistakes and conflicts. When problems arise, both partners acknowledge their roles and work together to find solutions. This approach prevents blame games and defensiveness, which add weight to love by creating emotional distance. Instead, responsibility transforms challenges into opportunities for growth and connection. Knowing that your partner is equally committed to resolving issues lightens the emotional load for both of you. Another way shared responsibility lends love is by encouraging personal growth. When each person is responsible for their emotional well-being and actions, they become more self-aware and emotionally mature. This growth enriches the relationship because it reduces reliance on the other person to fix problems or meet all emotional needs. Instead, love becomes a meeting of two wholes, responsible individuals who choose to support each other's journeys. And it's also important to recognize that shared responsibility is not about perfection or rigid equality in every moment. Life circumstances sometimes require one partner to carry more temporarily, and that's okay as long as it's balanced over time and with mutual understanding. The key is that both people remain committed to contributing and supporting each other, creating a flexible, compassionate partnership. When love is lightened through shared responsibility, it becomes a source of joy, not burden. It allows both partners to feel empowered, respected, and connected. Love thrives in this environment because it is no longer a heavy weight to carry alone, but a shared journey that uplifts and transforms both people. Ultimately, lightening love through shared responsibility is about partnership in the truest sense. It's about showing up for each other fully, honoring the balance of give and take, and embracing the shared commitment that love requires. When both people take responsibility for the relationship, they create a foundation where love can grow freely, resilient, and bright.